Okay. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Needham Historical Society. I am Rose A. Doherty, Chair of the Needham Historical Committee. Let me confirm that commission members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Okay, Gloria Grice, present, and I can hear you. Thank you. And Jeff Heller.
Present.
Okay, and Don Lenkowitz.
Present.
And do we have Laura Dorfman yet?
Hi, present.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so we do have a quorum. Thank heavens. Okay, I would also like Jen Doherty to respond in the affirmative that you are here and you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, good. So this open meeting of the Historical Commission is being conducted consistent with Governor Baker's executive order because of COVID-19, and that allows us to meet remotely and in a hybrid fashion as long as public access is afforded. And this meeting will feature public comment about the first item on the agenda. I want you to know that this meeting is being recorded and it's a public document. Recording is a public document. Anything you say may be broadcast, may be captured by the recording. And Zoom attendees, please be aware that other people can see you and take care not to share screen share with your computer. And all of the agenda has been sent to the website, and the public is encouraged to follow along. There you all are. Okay. Before we turn to the agenda, though, there will be some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business. I will introduce each item on the agenda, and for any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you and speak clearly and in a way that hopes to generate accurate minutes. Before speaking, all members of the public are asked to give their names and addresses for the minutes. And if you're on Zoom, please mute your computer when you're not speaking. To speak on Zoom, please raise your hand and you'll be given access to the meeting. There will be a brief delay until your connection is live. Finally, each vote taken at this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. So the first item on the agenda is a discussion with Jennifer Doherty of the Mass Historical Commission about local historic districts in Needham. However, I think it is important for us to have some background in the recording. The Historical Commission's charges are maintenance of the inventory of historic houses and protection of these properties. When a demolition permit is filed for an historic property, we strictly follow the guidelines set down in the town bylaws, section 2.11.5. We have had 3 requests for demolition come before us this year, and we recognize that it is now time to consider a way to preserve historic buildings beyond the regulations now in place. And the regulations are very simple. We confirm the historic significance of the house. We then decide in the second meeting whether it is to be preferably preserved, and if it is, we then issue a 6-month demolition delay. And the whole purpose of this is to have the owner find some way to do something other than demolish the house. However, after the 6 months, the house can be demolished. And the commission has considered lengthening the time of the demolition delay, but after talking with matchmaking towns and with the Historic Commission, we know that it doesn't do much good. So we have concluded that a local historic district is the best way to preserve our unique history, and want to emphasize that the owner of the property is always in charge. So tonight, we are pleased to have Jennifer Doherty, who is the local government coordinator of the Massachusetts Historical Commission, with us to talk about establishing a local historic district in Needham. It's the strongest protection that can be given to a piece of property. And I will invite Jennifer to talk a bit about what her role is as local government person.
Yep, sure. So thank you all for having me. I'm glad to be here. So I am the local government programs coordinator at the MHC, and I do this for most of the day. I work with all the cities and towns throughout Massachusetts, their historical commissions, historic district commissions. I'm just there to basically answer questions and kind of walk communities through the process of preserving that historic resource, their historic resources, whether that be demolition delay, local historic districts, anything else that they're looking to do. So yeah, certainly here to answer any questions.
Okay, and you now have over 220 historical districts around the Commonwealth, right?
Yes, yep. So about 130 communities have them. There's about 220 scattered throughout those communities.
Excellent, excellent. In our last meeting, we put together a list of questions that we wanted to ask you. And I also want you to know that we are working with our matchmake towns to ask them questions about what their experience has been. And I know that the question that I am most interested in is, how do we develop the public support for a local historic district bylaw? Because we do need a 2/3 vote.
I think you all are in a good position in that you do have a willing property owner who's kind of, there to go first and is, willing to say, no, I want my property protected first, to at least get the bylaw on the books and kind of, get the process started in that sense. When you're looking to move to larger districts, again, it's, all about property owner support and making sure that you have that support in the community. But it's also about education and making it clear what a local historic district does and does not do. It does obviously place some restrictions on what a property owner can do, but it doesn't compel a property owner to do anything. Once your house is a local historic district, in theory, you can just let it sit there and do nothing to it ever again. It doesn't mean that you have to maintain it or make it look more historic. It doesn't do anything like that. It just, there's a review process. If you're going to change something on the exterior of a property, and it does only affect the exterior of a property. So there's a review process if you're going to make a change. And that's the other big thing, is a change. If you are replacing like with like, you can certainly do that on your own. That's considered what we call sort of ordinary repair or maintenance. So that's, something property owners can just kind of go forward doing that. So I find a lot of times with districts, it's really speaking with property owners. Everyone has their plans for their property, oh, we were going to replace the roof in a few years, we were going to build an addition, whatever the case may be. So a lot of times it is just speaking with property owners and kind of seeing what their questions are about their specific property and helping to, allay that fear and kind of getting their support on your side.
I guess I see this as one of the great hurdles, that education piece, getting people to the point where they understand that this is a value for all of Needham to have historic properties. Other questions? Yes, Jeff.
Well, I sure have other questions, but just to take off on some of where you first start here. The support is obvious, right? And maybe later if we finish, I'll tell you the story of Lexington that I came in part of. I would expect Needham to act the same way if there was one, participant, not agreeable participant. Certainly anyone's going to not want to impose that, and that was that person that maybe must be outspoken. How dare they do this upon me? I don't think Needham would ever do that. Unless there was some reason that the person was an oddball, and even though, again, it's property rights. Again, you can do whatever you want. If you want to not fix your house, you can not fix your house. Right? Even if you are under constraints of things. So I wonder why, where the process, why Lexington went forward. And, with that, without that person's agreement. Did they get a how far in the process did they get? Did they get a bylaw on the books? And so the process was approved, but then when it came to the specifics, they said, oh, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
That's not what we meant when we approved this bylaw.
So some background on that larger situation. So Lexington is a little different because they do have what are called special act districts. So those, they are not acting under 40C. They were acting, most of their existing districts were established by the state legislature. They had a property that came up for demolition. The property owner was looking to demolish it and replace it with several houses. They put their demolition delay on it. I believe they have a year right now. They have 12 months, excuse me. And so during those 12 months, they sought to make the property a local historic district because that is a way to protect properties during demolition delay. The property owner has not received a demolition permit yet. So it is a legal thing to do to make a local historic district during the demolition delay period. Because their existing districts aren't under special acts, they were looking to make this 40C district. So it was going to follow essentially the same process that you were all will follow. They had the neighbor support. All the neighbors surrounding that house wanted the local historic district because they wanted to protect their neighborhood. They, saw this development coming in and did not want this development. And it was a very nice house. It was a sort of early 1920s or 1920s kind of like Spanish eclectic building. It was a really nice building. Unfortunately, obviously it got to town meeting and under 40C legally, you do not need property owner consent to make a local historic district. You can make a local historic district with property, even if the property owner says no. But Lexington town meeting said no. They are a representative town meeting, and they just felt that they did not want to establish a district over the voice of that single property owner, even though it had the wide support of the neighborhood, which is unfortunate. We are seeing it more and more, unfortunately. Even though you don't need property owner consent, different communities will sort of unofficially set their own thresholds at town meeting. So for example, I used to work in Framingham, and when we still had town meeting there, they said, no, we need property owner consent for our districts here in Framingham. In Brookline, they have a similar situation. They require 80% of property owners in the proposed district to say yes. And they had a similar situation recently where they didn't hit that 80% threshold, so it didn't make it to town meeting, unfortunately. So it has come up more and more, but again, a lot of it ultimately kind of comes down to education.
Can't you define the perimeters of the local historic district to only include houses that have 100% approval? If you pick a street that went from, and 90% of the street wanted it, but there was one house or two houses that didn't want to be a part of it, could you just write the district that says it's from this point to this point, excluding this house and this house?
You can, but the one thing we do try and avoid what we call Swiss cheese districts, or sort of string cheese districts where you've got, you're kind of going along the road to connect to that one property that's way down there. The thing about local historic districts a lot of the times is that you're trying to preserve the overall character of the neighborhood. You may have one house that is especially unique and you want to protect that one single building. You can certainly do that legally. You can have a single property district. But with a local historic district, you're really looking to protect the overall character. So it does protect all buildings that are in the district, even if it was built 5 years ago, that will still come under local historic district purview, even though it's not historic. And so you don't want to kind of do that picking and choosing among properties because, something could happen on that lot that would then ultimately impact the overall historic character. If you have a neighborhood full of, 1940s capes and, this one property owner doesn't want their house there, that property is excluded, they suddenly build a giant, 3,000 square foot house on that lot, you're really destroying the overall form and character of that neighborhood.
Right.
So that's why we try and avoid those sort of
Well,
Swiss
who's
cheese
we?
districts.
Because, yeah, you know.
We recommend that communities avoid those Swiss
Yes,
cheese
so-
districts.
But I think
Okay.
so then, following up on my next question, which is the education point. I think that's ideal, and I think I have ideas, but I wonder if you could give examples of, I mean, obviously, maybe, I don't know, did Lexington in their process make an effort to educate, the town meeting? Why are we doing this? It might seem like we're, violating someone's rights. However, and you better have a good answer. I think you better have a good answer for that,
Yeah.
because, but, to do that, but also, where are some examples of some towns that also maybe did a poor job, or I'm more interested in towns that did a good job with education? How did they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I can't think of any examples recently. A lot of the districts we've had recently have generally had property owner support. Aside from the one in Lexington, or were, really unique situations. The towns wanted to protect the building anyways, kind of regardless of what the property owner was saying. I think in Lexington, there were some other local political issues that were going on in the general Lexington planning world that impacted what happened at town meeting. But they did obviously make an effort to reach out to their, like I said, representative town meeting. So that district had specific town meeting members that, were representing it. They made an effort to reach out to them to speak with them specifically. So.
Okay, Mo.
I have
and
a
then
strategic question,
Go ahead.
if it's all right.
Oh, yes, please.
So my read of this community, based on my experience in town meeting, is that if people are placed in an involuntary situation with respect to demolition delay, or in this case, an historic district, certainly in the beginning, that's not going to go, that won't fly at town meeting. So I think strategically, we would be best served by having an experimental approach. So to try an individual property with a willing owner, and then look at potential other neighborhoods where all of the people involved in the potential historic district were willing participants, you would get a track record of the efficacy of the district, the administrative implication for the town, the potential costs of administering the district, and how you would go about developing a historic commission for that district. So it would be a phased, I think we would be served by a phased approach, so that nobody would be threatened by the notion that all of a sudden they were in a situation where they couldn't alter the outside of the house.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly one way to do it. It's kind of, proof of concept essentially that,
Right.
Mo's had this district for 5 years and he's only applied once when he wanted to replace it or put up a fence or something,
Right.
and kind of showing that it really has very little impact on your day-to-day use of your property. It's really kind of only when those big situations come around, like putting on an addition or,
Demolition.
or demolition, yes. That it really is going to impact how a property owner uses and maintains their property.
One of the problems, in sort of that process, okay, is all renovation, has the word demolition, right?
Mhm.
It's, there's always to modernize, and to save a house and preserve a house, you need to modernize it. And you need to use modern materials and modern tastes, as well. So there's going to be, and if you're maintaining the character of the old house, you're still going to demolish part of it, and that's going to come in there, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that red flags our process, and sometimes we're here discussing things that we're totally, supportive of, and we would have been happy if the building department said, but
Yeah.
again, there's a demo word.
Yeah, but I think, and again, it goes back to, education around what the historic district does and does not review. Again, doesn't review anything on the inside of a building. You can completely, strip the inside of a building and do whatever you want in there, make it a full, 2-story tall house or whatever, inside. And it's not gonna come down. It's really only if you're actually demolishing something on the outside of the building or the entire building that it will come into play.
Okay, done.
Just to follow up on what Mo was saying about this pilot or experimental phase, what does that do to the process then? I mean, who decides then if the experiment is a success or a fail?
So if you go to town meeting and you establish a historic district, you establish most houses as a historic district, you would establish a historical commission, or a historic district commission, excuse me. You might end up just sort of tweaking this commission rather than establishing a completely separate commission for one district, but you
That
just have
that
to.
can happen? We
Yes.
were under the impression, that it had to be totally separate.
So it can and it can't be, it can legally be, yes. But we often find that in communities where they have a lot of historic districts, or they have very active historic districts, that if you have a combined commission, that combined commission then gets really focused on just the historic district stuff and kind of loses the overall view of the community and its historic activities. So obviously, if you just have one house, I think you guys could handle that, if it was applying for something, you're not applying for something every single month.
I have an example. that will
But
help.
I just want to circle back to this question. So once you have that commission established, you've established a single district, you've established an historic district commission. Going forward, establishing new local historic districts starts with the historic district commission. So right now, you guys, I believe, don't have a study committee. You did not ask,
we
yes,
don't,
so you
not
haven't
yet.
done that yet. In the future, you do not need to ask the select board for a study committee. It would just be the existing historic district commission would act as the study committee.
That's
That
after
local
40C
historic-
goes in.
That's after you've passed it, yep, and you have an
Okay.
existing
But
historic.
why would
district
that local
commission.
historic district that was given the charge of overseeing that one house,
Mhm.
okay? Why would it have any say on the next local historic district? Wouldn't you want a separate local historic district committee that is making this decision relevant to that local historic district? Because, again, what's the charge of Mo's might be, the only thing that he might dare say is can't be demolished, right? Where another one might say, we don't want to be demolished, also, but might propose some other.
Let's let.
You're talking about a single initial historic district.
Mhm.
So there's probably no enduring harm in having this commission or the bulk of this commission being the de facto historic district commission for that district. If you start to get into a lot of other historic districts, then of course you would probably want to go to the individual route of a specific district commission for each district. And the current example is Needham has a housing trust. It's comprised of the current select board plus a public representative from the citizenry. So that's comprised of the existing select board, which has a separate function in government, but for purposes of the housing commission, housing trust, serves as that body as well. So it's a parallel with respect to that one district.
Is there a person appointed to that?
There is,
Do you know who that is?
I do.
Well, so just to get back to that, you under 40C, if for some reason you are establishing a new historic district and the existing historic district commission does not want to act as a study committee, you can then go through the process of setting up a separate study committee. So if you say, oh, well, Mo's house is an 18th century house, corrected, it's single property, but we're going to look at this, multi-property district of mid 20th century houses over on the complete other side of town. Then you might say, no, we want to set up a separate study committee to look at that. And maybe we want to set up, once that's established, their recommendation might be to set up a separate historic district commission just to oversee that district. But once you establish the process of having a local historic district, anything starts with the historic district study committee.
Okay. Laura, were you finished?
Well, I was gonna ask another question. Well, it's still this, so with that commission, we're talking specifically about in those cases, if we serve as this historical commission served as the study group, we would still need to have an architect.
So so for this first historic district, you will need to ask the select board to form a study committee. And so that will be a separate group from this commission. So that needs to have you need to request representatives from the Historical Society, the AIA, and the Board of Realtors. You need to request.
So IIA is.
American
American
Institute of
Architects.
Architects.
You need to request nominees from them. They may not give you nominees, but you do have to request nominees. And if they do send you one, you do have to appoint them. You have to have at least those 3 members. You can have up to 7 members on the initial study committee. So if you wanted some of, you all to be on that commission, you could certainly do that as well. And then if you establish the historic district, you go to town meeting, it passes, and you want to establish yourselves as a historic district commission, you have to talk to town council about that, about adding some of those members to this commission. Because you do need some of those seats, those sort of reserved seats of, district resident, AIA, whatever. However, in the study report that is prepared for town meeting, you can recommend that the seats on the Historic District Commission differ from what is required in 40C, if there's a reason for that. And you can just say, it's a single property, we want to have different seats. So you can kind of get around that, and you could just have a commission.
I just wanted to clarify. So if we're using the term experimental or pilot, that really doesn't mean we're short circuiting the process in any way. We're just saying this is the initial.
No,
Attempt.
this is just your first attempt at establishing a historic district in Needham. It's just, you happen to have a willing owner, it's one property.
And it also
it's the
establishes the
same-
mechanism.
And it establishes the mechanism, it establishes, it has the community adopt 40C so that then in the future you can establish the future local stuff.
40C is the.
The state enabling things like that.
And Gloria.
Well, I also wanted a clarification what you just said, or actually what Jeff just said. When the town adopts the 40C bylaw, within that is essentially the rubric under which assessments will be made, or does every district commission make it, tweak its own rules?
So a little bit of yes and a little bit of no. So under 40C, there is obviously, 40C includes the sort of general structure of what a historic district commission reviews. And again, that's, changes to the exterior of property visible from public way. It also completely exempts landscaping. So historic district commissions do not review landscaping. That never comes to them for review. And then within 40C, there's section 8, I believe, has a list of things that communities can choose to exempt in their bylaw. And so those tend to be more temporary things. Or things that, just really don't impact the character as much. So things like driveways and patios, things that are kind of at grade. Home, signs for, residential home businesses that are, smaller than a certain dimension. Storm windows and doors, window air conditioners, fences, things like that. So it's a list of several items. The community can pick and choose. They can say, no, we want to review all of those things. Or they can say, oh, we want to review these 5 things, or we want to review all of them. Paint color is the other big one that's in there, paint color, roof color. So you can certainly exempt that so that you don't review paint color. So that's in 40C.
But you would do that up front.
You would do that up
So
front.
you
That
would
would
go to
be
town
in
meeting
town
and say-
meeting. We'd say, yep,
For
these,
example, we're just looking at demolition and we're not going to include this.
exactly. And then once you have adopted the bylaw, we encourage historic district commissions to establish what we call design guidelines. And that kind of more fully lays out what the commission is looking for in that district. No, we will not approve we really discourage the use of vinyl windows, or, here's the overall character of the district, here's what we're looking for new construction, if there's new construction in the district. That's kind of where they get down into the more nitty-gritty of what they will and will not approve. And then using those two, the structure of 40C, the structure of the design guidelines, an applicant applies, the commission reviews what they're applying for, reviews the guidelines, and then kind of decides from there.
So the design guidelines are for the specific district?
They can be for the specific district, or they can be city or community wide.
In the bylaw?
They're not adopted in the bylaw, they're adopted by the commission itself. So those are not.
Okay.
So what if the bylaw,
That, I'm sorry, that actually confuses me a little bit, because then if we say under the bylaw, for example, that windows and doors are exempt.
Well, you can't fully exempt windows and doors, you can exempt storm windows and doors. Yeah, so the exemptions from 40C are sort of smaller, more temporary things, it's not big things like that.
But any exemption in 40C is absolute through the district.
Would be,
design.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you exempt storm windows and doors in 40C in the town bylaw, you can't then put in your design guidelines that storm windows and doors have to come for review. That'd be bylaw. But the design guidelines are something that the commission adopts as a commission, kind of like your rules and regs. You have an existing bylaw for the board, and then you have your rules and regs that cover how you operate.
So if I may ask a question, so if it's not exempted, if it's exempted in the 40C townwide bylaw, it can't be included in the individual districts. But if it's not exempted, it can be exempted in the individual districts.
No, you have to have that in the bylaw. And so there are some communities that will exempt different things in different districts that are allowed under 40C. So in one district, for example, Beacon Hill obviously does not exempt paint color. They review paint color in Beacon Hill, but there's other districts in Boston where they don't review paint color. So you can, if you pass one version of the historic district bylaw, if you go back for another district, you can say, oh, in this other district, we are going to change the exemptions.
So you would be actually wise to be pretty judicious about what you do exempt from the bylaw, because you might want to draw in some other things. So you might not want to say, for example, to the town, okay, in this 40C bylaw, we're not going to include paint color.
Yeah. If there's then going to be a district down the road where you do want to review that color, you may want to think about that. But I mean, that may also be, something that's a larger conversation when that district comes up, that, oh, this area is so significant that we do want to have more control in this area, and we do want to review paint color.
So you always want to make those options up.
Rose, it's Laura. Could I ask a question?
I didn't see you waving your hand. But you are speaking. Okay, thank you.
So Jen, so thank you for being here. It's really helpful for us. My question is, let's say hypothetically Mo has a neighbor who finds out about this and says, well, now I want to be part of that district. How does that work?
You essentially follow the same process. So if you'd already gone to town meeting and Mo's district is already established, Mo's had his district for 5 years, the neighbor says, oh, it's not so bad, I want to join in. You essentially follow the same process that you follow to establish a district, to expand a district.
Oh, wow.
So you would, you'd go back and you'd form the study, or you'd have a study report, and then you go to town meeting, and then you would just, re-record a new map and adjust your bylaw as needed.
So that seems like a lot of work. If the person's willing to adopt the same, bylaw restrictions or however limitations, whatever you want to call them, as Mo has, you still have to go through the whole thing again. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
question in that situation, what if somebody who requested, oh, can I join? And Mo said, well, I don't want him to join. My local historic district is, well established and it protects my
I'm not
property.
that territorial.
But but just thinking hypothetically, because it could sort of,
Establish
Good.
another one-house district.
Yes, you can,
yes.
you can
So then they
establish
would-
another single property district if you really
right,
wanted
so
to. but-
they wouldn't have,
No veto.
No, there's no, I mean, Mo can't veto someone else's district.
no, but he can veto them wanting to join
No, he
his.
can't, no. I mean, he can say he doesn't want it, but ultimately you all are gonna go
No,
to
it's
town
up to the
meeting.
commission and the town meeting.
Right.
Yeah,
But hopefully, wouldn't he be one of the members of the local historic district?
not necessarily, it
But,
does,
okay.
it does require you to have a member, but if there's some reason that you can't have a district resident, you can just not have a district resident on your commission.
Wouldn't you want to be on the local historic district that oversees, that rules on?
My principal concern, which I think is also a concern of this body, is to prevent the demolition of the property. So if that includes me or a member of my family as a member of the district commission, fine. But it's not a requirement from the way I'm looking at this issue, which is to try to preserve the presence of an historic property going forward.
You also generally can't vote on something that you have a financial interest in, so
Yes.
he would just be
Yes.
recusing himself every time he came up
Besides,
for
if he
a.
was really, I mean, if he was really opposed to it, he could oppose it in town meeting.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna have that situation, then why trouble, just establish a separate district, since you're going through almost the entire same process anyway. So there's a district, this district, and that district,
Mhm.
and it's effectively the same
Mhm.
result.
That seems
Without
the
having to,
simplest
without
way.
having to.
This stirs up a lot of questions and concerns for me. I would be in a local, I don't own a historic house. I would want to be in a historic district. I would not want to relinquish I would not want to relinquish all of my control and sit back and watch another, committee make decisions without me having, some input in that process, overseeing that district.
So become a member of that district. I'm saying with respect to this particular proposed district, I personally don't care either way.
Okay.
But if you care about that and you propose a district,
So you're saying there's a problem with an owner being a member of that local historic district?
I mean, in this sense, if the district is only Mo's house, the only applications they're gonna be receiving are for Mo's house, and so he cannot vote on them because he has a financial interest in that property, so he would just be recusing himself every single time from anything relating to that district. In larger districts, it's obviously not an issue, plenty of people that live in districts and are served on district commissions because it's not always them applying, it's other people applying, so.
All right. So I got off on a tangent because of Laura's question. I don't know if she still probably has the floor somewhat.
Oh, no, I understand. It just seems hard that, unfortunately, you'd have to go through it twice but it is what it is. But I understand. Thank you.
That's also a safeguard for homeowners, so they feel that, they don't lose that control of the process.
Mhm. Look, I go back to the study commission for a minute because I know the regulations say that we may be given 2 names of realtors, 2 names of architects, and someone from a historical society. It would be the local historic.
It's the historical society, or if you don't have one, it's historic New England, but if you have one
Okay.
and they're active, then you.
Okay, then we do, and she is active, yes. Now, the question that I have though is, can we suggest realtors or architects to be appointed to the study commission, or do we have to take the ones that are given to us?
So the way it's worded is you have to ask those 3 organizations, the Historical Society, the local chapter, the AIA, and then the local board of realtors. You have to ask them for nominees.
Is it the
At least
society or the commission?
the
Society.
society. The
So
society.
the commission is.
There's no role for the historical commission essentially. So you have to ask each of those 3 organizations for 2 nominees.
Okay,
If they do not, they have 30 days to respond. If they do not respond, then you can appoint whoever, the select board can appoint whoever they want.
okay. Good.
So, I mean, if for whatever reason they don't respond, then you could certainly suggest other people, or you could encourage people to apply, following whatever process you usually follows to appoint folks to a board. And then also, the study committee, those three members or those three sort of appointments are, you have to follow that process and have those three members. But you can have up to 7 members. So if you wanted 4 people from this commission, for example, to be also on the study committee, you could do that. And, have them on the select board.
What's your experience with those agencies making recommendations to towns when they make the request?
It varies whether they respond or not, to begin with. We did have an inquiry recently from the Pioneer Valley Board of Realtors asking us about it and asking us about appointments, and we don't.
Do they understand even? Are they calling up
I
and
don't
saying, what
even-
is this?
They didn't even understand really from the text of their email. And, we do not really track appointments. We're not involved in this process. It's really only if you tell us who is on your commission that we know. So we really don't know, how often those folks actually get appointed or how often those boards actually respond to appointments. So it really, I think, varies by the community too, if there's actually members that are interested in doing it as well.
Okay, I wonder whether there is any data that you have about the economic benefits of historic districts to do.
So there's a
Beautiful.
study that was done in Connecticut a few years ago. And it looked at local historic districts and it looked at National Register districts, which are obviously, they're 2 different things. There's no regulations on National Register districts. And it found that most especially in the local historic districts, less so in the National Register districts, through the recession, those properties actually held their values higher and longer than properties outside of local historic districts. So there was actually, a benefit to being in a local historic district because it held up the value of that property.
And could we get the reference to
Yeah,
that?
it's,
Okay.
I think it was done by Place Economics, but I can find it, and send it to you. I have it somewhere. And, there's a couple different things, a couple reasons for that. But, one of the big things is that once you're in a local historic district, you kind of know what's going to happen in the neighborhood, or that there's a certain level of,
Comfort.
control, and, there's not going to be suddenly a 5-story apartment building, that's going to pop up across the street. And so there's some security to the property values in that sense,
Mhm.
because you know what's going to happen, what your neighbors are going to be allowed to do or not allowed to do. So that's some of it. And then it's just, do the folks who live in historic districts, they like to maintain their properties more, or they, take more care in their properties, things like that. So that's what they found basically, is that, that's the one big recent study that I know of that looked at the economics of it.
But for clarity, that's a multi-building.
Yeah, and those were multi-property
Right.
local historic districts, yeah. It's obviously raking single property, you have no control over what happens next door,
Right.
beyond local
Right.
zoning.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Can we revisit, Don's question about, the experiment process, and the experimental process, because it's not really, it's defined to experiment for us, but it's not really, we're not.
No, you're following the
Well,
process.
we're
I mean,
not
it's
counting it
just
as an experiment,
Yeah.
right? So, but I'm more concerned because we want to go forward with this, as, I think as quickly as possible, and it's a laborious process. But also, so the nuts and bolts of it. And we're doing this because, I think Mo's house is the easiest sell for a house, right? But the education comes in by law. People have to understand, because they're going to vote for this bylaw, and then they're going to recognize that is going to be, that's more than just Mo's house. That's the.
It's setting up a process.
A
for the town.
process for them to approve later on. And of course, we'll have to be upfront about that. We don't want them to say, oh, you're trying to pull one over on us, by doing this one. And we want to say, as part of the education process, and it is a laborious process, this is the easiest way to do it. And when we will come back forward with you for other communities. The neighborhoods that want to do this. So that's that. Do we can we do the bylaw without doing a house?
No. You need a property that you're actually making a historic district. So that's the reason you are adopting the bylaw is because you are designating a historic district. You can't just adopt a bylaw and then not have something that you're designating.
Because this is the plan, the planning board. I mean, there are times when they come in and do we have to change, we have to do
We
a
change
change
it
of
just in
zoning,
case, yeah.
We do have a plan,
Yeah.
okay? But before we can go and do that development, we have to change this zoning,
Yeah.
first. And we'll do that at the next town meeting. So planning does, do that, right? On occasions, like, recall?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Jeff.
It's doing the piecemeal. First thing you go to is go to change the bylaw, establish the bylaw.
But that, in this case, that process, and I'm not expert on the process, but my reading of it is, in order to change the bylaw, you need a property
Yeah.
or
Well,
a
that's what
series of
you just
properties.
answered.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if it was an easier sell, we're gonna do this, we want to
I'm thinking
impose
of
it.
something like the overlay districts where,
Yeah.
nobody's
Yeah.
asked us to establish a porn shop, but if they do, we've already figured out where they could go.
Yes.
Yeah.
You need to have a district that is the reason that you as a community are adopting Mass General Laws, Chapter 40C. Otherwise, there's no reason for you to have a historic district bylaw.
Yes, Ms. Storkman.
Oh, hi. Just a question for Mo, actually. Had you spoken to any of your neighbors about whether they would want to be part of this?
I have not solicited my neighbors with respect to being part of this. There are two houses next to mine that were built by the owner of our house way back. But I felt that given the resistance to increasing the demolition delay discussion that we had many years ago, in order to establish the bylaw, the 40C, it would be easier to understand that there was a willing owner that wanted to have those restrictions placed on his and her property.
I'm just wondering because you are a willing owner, right? Obviously, you're going forward with this, but what's the harm in asking them, I guess is my
I
question.
have no difficulty in them being asked or not being asked. I am only here out of my own concern with respect to the oldest house in my zip code, and knowing full well that if I were to sell that house or my heirs were to sell that house, it would be gone in a heartbeat. So my concern is to find the quickest, most expeditious and fairest path to establishing a way for people like me who care about the historic value of their property to find some way to preserve that property beyond their time in this community.
So I completely understand that. I guess here's my question is, we know it's not efficient to have to sort of go back, even if there's a house next door that decides they want to do this once you've been successful with this. And I don't know that asking them and having them say no would slow down the process of your home being declared a local historic district. So I'm just
I'm
trying
more than
to.
willing to ask them if you think I should do that. I am happy.
Well, I would defer that to Jen because she would know, I guess, more
Yeah.
about this than I.
No, I mean, if you're gonna do it, you may as well just double
Happy
check
enough to
and,
ask
you know,
them.
say, this is what we're
Well,
doing.
they
this
may
is
or
what
may
we're
not be
doing.
interested. That's fine. with me.
You have to, I think it's your decision, Mo, because you have the most knowledge about what those interests are. Are those houses on the inventory?
No, they're
None
not.
of those houses are particularly old.
Oh,
I don't see any downside, Jeff. I'm not really sure what the
The one
downside to that is.
Hill across the street with Beech Tree.
Yeah.
That
That
one's
one's
old.
I mean, the more properties we
One
bring
across from
into
you is
this
brand new.
discussion, the more complicated it will be
right.
and
That's
the
Yes.
longer it
Yes.
will take.
I agree.
Yeah.
So if you
So,
gotta have somebody who's as passionate about it as you are, I think.
So,
I'll do whatever you want me to do. That's all I can tell you. I'm
But we
interested-
can't, certainly can't tell you what to do, but I'm just making the suggestion. I don't know why you know, if they say no, they say no, it doesn't change a thing.
Perfectly willing to do that.
It just
All I'm
might
trying
save
to
us
do
some
is-
time down the road is all I'm saying, because every time we want to add a property, whether it's next door to yours or across town, it looks like we have to go through the same process again. And so if there's no risk that your request would be affected in any way, I guess I'm not sure why we wouldn't want to just include your abutters.
Actually, go ahead.
I would prefer not to do that because,
Well,
but I'm happy to do it if you want me to.
Justification establishing the district. The houses on your part of the street are not particularly old.
1920s,
Yeah,
the
they would
first
not
two.
be, under the normal, course of affairs, they haven't been, and wouldn't be selected for the historic inventory.
When you say that they were
So-
built by the owner of your house, it wasn't the original
Not-
owner.
not John
No, it was
The
built
original
by the
owner of
rich
house.
wagons.
No, the rich wagons. Does that sort of dilute the argument that you take to town meeting if you have demonstrably it's one thing to say it's one street we were looking at where all of the houses were built around the same period of time in the 1890s to about 1910 as part of a, build out in downtown. There is now one missing tooth. So, even if you scoop that one up or didn't, there's a unification. There isn't that kind of historic narrative or unification in Mo's neighborhood. And I can see equally well the danger of taking this to town meeting and having somebody say, this really has nothing to do with preservation. You're just trying to bypass the demolition issue because these houses, other than those houses, these houses have no historic value.
There's another factor, if I may, and that is there's a very volatile, very high demand real estate market. Either one or both of those owners could change their mind in the middle of this process.
Yep.
So I would prefer to keep it simple. This is a pilot. If it works and it's doable and it's administratively a burden that can be carried, then it can be demonstrated, but it has to happen first.
I think.
Oh, can I just, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So
No, go ahead.
Gloria, to your comment earlier about this is just trying to bypass the demolition. That's the point of this whole thing, is that we don't have enough strength with our demolition delays. So we are using this means to preserve properties. So,
Just to preserve historic properties.
correct.
You
Or
still-
any property. I mean,
No.
historic property is on the table after 6 months. I mean, there's no,
But if you went to town meeting and said, we're looking for a way just to prevent people from tearing houses down,
You're dead.
it's a very different.
I'm not
argument.
suggesting that, but your
Very
comment
common.
earlier was people might see this as a way to get around the demolition delay. Well, isn't that what we're trying to do here?
Not to get around the demolition delay, because that would only apply to Mo's house, to get around demolition in general. What's the justification for putting restriction on a 1920s house that has no arguable historical?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that the owner might want to opine on that, him or herself. And if you guys think it's going to complicate this issue, I'm not here to muddy up the waters. I'm just trying to create efficiency. And, that's fine, whatever you want to do. I don't have an objection one way or the other. I'm bringing up the suggestion, because I think it makes more sense where we have to keep going back every time. But if you feel this will slow things down, I'm not going to get in the way of that. I just feel like I should bring it up. That's all.
I agree with Gloria that it's a risk. And if someone at town meeting just accuses the historic commission of overstepping their bounds about trying to control demolitions of things that are not on their inventory, we would stand accused and guilty.
That is not overstepping our bounds, Jeff. We're not overstepping our bounds. Sorry, but I disagree with that. I'm just trying to make this, doing one house at a time is not a really efficient way to do it. I understand it's an experiment, it's a pilot, and we want to do that and make it really easy. But we also have to be cognizant of if we really want to, if our goal is to preserve properties that are historic and we do one a year, we're getting nowhere.
But the properties you're suggesting to be included in are not historic.
I'm
So-
not suggesting they be included. I'm suggesting the owners be asked if they would like to be. Whatever. I'm just giving you my opinion. If that makes things too complicated, then we'll go forward with just Mo's house. I think it's a fair question to ask. Does anybody agree besides me?
It's a fair question.
I
from my
think it is a
perspective.
fair question, but I think that it does in fact complicate things because we know that getting things through town meeting for a 2/3 vote is not going to be easy. That's going to be hard. And if we've got a single focus, an 18th century house that we want to have in a local historic district so that it is preserved, we've got a strong argument.
Okay. I think probably this discussion doesn't need to happen here. I think we probably have to talk about it separately or just say, no, Laura, we don't. I think it might require a vote. I'm not sure. I don't want to drag this thing on. I just brought it up because it came to mind.
Thank you. Okay, Gloria?
This is then the sort of opposite situation when we have, for example, now a house goes on the inventory, even though we don't have to by policy, we get the owner's permission. What goes on the inventory. So you own the house, it's on the inventory. You sell the house, we try and keep up with sales to let the new owner know that they're on the inventory, but that, that's a mixed success, especially now that Chip is retired.
Yeah.
Four owners down the line, they don't realize that their house is on the inventory. The realtor hasn't told them, or the realtor doesn't know, so they want to sell it to a builder, tear down, and suddenly they realize. And we've had this argument with them before, spoken to town council, and he said, no, it's on the inventory, it's on the inventory, regardless of the current owners, if the owner at the time agreed, current owner's not right. What happens, is it a similar situation for this, if the house is, say, because it can't be torn down, Mo then sells his house to somebody who wants to preserve it, and the next owner decides that they would really rather subdivide the 2 lots and make a ton of money, and then they discover that they can't. I'm assuming there's no sort of now I can opt out provision.
Nope. It would have to be undone, so you'd have to go back through the process and go back to town meeting, have town meeting vote to remove it from the historic district. So,
I have a question about, go ahead, Jeff. And I'll ask my
So say, later on, I would like the conversation to go sort of for future things, but this answers the question. If there was a historic district that included 8 properties, and all the owners agreed to it and at that point, and then later down the line, someone could sell a house and somebody appeals, can I remove my house from this local historic district? They could go to town meeting and ask to do that.
you would have to go through the process, so they would have to start with the historic district commission, have the historic district commission produce a study report, and then go to town meeting to remove it.
So that they'd have to study this and basically say, we don't want to impose something on somebody who.
We don't want to be in the district anymore, or whatever the case may be, and then it would be up to town meeting to decide if they want to remove that or not.
Would the district commission have to approve that before it went to town?
Yes, they'd have to approve the study.
So they would have a veto.
Yeah, it's not just that the property owner can just go to town meeting and ask. They'd have to follow the same
They'd have to make a
process.
compelling argument to the local district.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the study commission, because that's certainly the first step that we have to take. And one of the things that I would like to know is, okay, we can have up to 7 members and we know who the 3 have to be, but is there a mechanism whereby who runs this and make sure that it is a dynamic thing that's doing things that's supposed to be done? Does this group of 7 choose someone?
I mean, it's up to,
Usually?
it's like a regular appointed board, like any other board would be. So,
Okay.
you know, you have to appoint a chair and a secretary, I believe, and, they go from there.
Advocating
Obviously, if they just don't meet or, don't do anything, they are kind of ultimately responsible to the select board. I suppose the select board could, disband the committee and, something like that, but, ultimately they're kind of like any other board in town, you guys,
Right.
so.
Select board checks up on us.
What was that?
The select board checks up on us and what's going on.
Yes, they do check up on us. And, but I would like to see it move forward in an efficient way.
Yeah, I mean, then it's certainly up to you all or, Bo,
Whoever.
property owner, to kind of, to make sure you're kind of pushing things along and,
Okay.
keeping up with them.
Okay, thank you. That takes care of one of my questions.
Mo had mentioned earlier, the purpose in an experiment or a pilot would be to sort of run through administration of the district and cost. What is involved in administration and cost for the district?
So it's really just, at the most basic level is taking in applications when someone wants to do some kind of work to their property. Submit an application to the Historic District Commission for them to review. Whatever that process is up to the town. So it varies by community, what the application looks like, if there's an application fee.
Which
those
we
kinds of
currently do for
things.
building permits.
Yeah, and it may be a little different than building permits. A lot of time building permits are tied to the cost of the work. Some communities do that. Some, when I was in Framingham, we just had a flat fee of $50. That supposedly covered, taking in the application, having the town clerk's office kind of stamp it in and take it in, basically. And then, there is before the Historic District Commission has to discuss the application in a public hearing. So there is a notice requirement for that. It's just a mailed notice. There's no newspaper notice. It's just a mailed notice.
There are no newspapers.
Yeah, no, that's the whole separate issue, but yeah, there's no newspapers. And it's just a mailed notice and it's to the property owner and the abutters.
But who normally pays those costs? The applicant.
In Framingham, it was us, the town paid it, but we just did postcards, so those were pretty.
But there's nothing to stop the town from assessing.
You
the
could,
applicant.
you could do it like, planning board and ZBA, and oftentimes those will put those costs onto an applicant, so, you could certainly do it that way.
And they could go through town hall, through the town.
The applications do have to be taken in by the town clerk's office. They kind of reside with the town clerk's office.
Okay.
So they have to take them in, stamp them in, maintain those files. And then when a decision is prepared on an application, it goes back up to the town clerk's office and is stamped in by them. So that's why, in Framingham, that's why they said it's essentially $50 for the town clerk to take in the application, stamp it, process the check, and then take in the decision, stamp it, and maintain it in their files. So
May I ask you
that's
a
kind of why I said
question?
that.
In Framingham, does the building department flag the property so that
Mhm.
somebody coming in for a permit is told they have to go
They have to go
down?
downstairs. Yep. And ours, obviously the town clerk has no idea what a historic district commission is a lot of the times, and what's involved in that. So it essentially kind of gets shifted a lot onto planning staff to then work with property owners, when they have questions, or the building department staff, when someone is actually at that counter and asking about their property, asking what they're looking to do. So that's kind of where a lot of the administration comes in.
So it's not on the heads of the commission.
I mean, it could certainly be, if the building department staff doesn't want to deal with it, it says, oh, just go talk to this person, that could certainly be how it ends up going. But, usually that first point of contact is the building department, or if the property owner already knows that they have to come to the commission, they may directly reach out to the commission.
Okay. In terms of action steps, is it too early for us to reach out to the local Realtor board and the local AIA?
No, you would want to do that once the select board votes to form a study committee,
Right.
and they would likely,
Okay.
you'd
Yes.
want to let them know that they have to do that as part of their appointment process.
Right.
And then, whatever the usual appointment process is, they would have to incorporate that,
Okay.
asking them and waiting 30 days into that process.
Okay. Are there other questions? Yes, Joe.
Well, if we're done with the kind of, the initial process, questions, and initiating this process, I have a question about, once we've been successful with the whole process, and we have established, maybe say several local historic districts. I'd like to relay an experience that I had attending the Newton Upper Falls Historic District. And I went there and I heard them reviewing, and some people wanted to put a deck on the flat roof of the back door of their house. Right, and it went up for discussion. And I was there for something else on the agenda. And I watched this process. And these people, this couple got beat up. The way people responded to them, if it was someone passing on judgment onto what I wanted to do and all of this, I would have been enraged. I would have made a scene. I was amazed at how these people contained themselves. And they sat there and they did this, and eventually the vote went, and it went in their favor. And then when I went and voted, I was just, I asked questions and who the participants were. And it turned out that the person who was most vehemently outspoken, in some ways against it, he didn't vote against it, but he was so disrespectful to the people. Just being, I thought he felt he had a responsibility to be devil's advocate, and I was just appalled. All right, and he didn't even live anywhere near. He lived all the way on the other side of Newton. Didn't even live in the neighborhood. And I was just appalled by that.
That's why we live in Needham.
So
That's why we live here.
but is there a way to protect? Is there a way of protecting, given the fact that what I'm hearing is that you have to have a broader representation that goes beyond the neighborhood? How do we protect about that? Where there's somebody who could just be, appointed from somewhere there, and they get, in some ways, act out.
I mean, that's down to your town's appointment process. Obviously, everyone gets reappointed every 3 years, and
It's true of every board in the town.
yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
So you
Right.
smiled when I did this, so it seems like you're familiar with this kind of process happening in other
I mean,
situations.
all these boards have the, reputation of being the hysterical commission and, those kinds of things. And, so, and it depends on the community. There is usually one member on the board who's very vocal about, their thoughts about what's happening in the community. And a lot of times, it extends beyond the historic districts and, beyond what they really should be reviewing.
Do you know of that local historic district?
No, I don't.
But I do.
They have-
And
they
so do
have
other
a lot
people
of
around this
very
table.
specific constraints.
I have a neighbor who had a house property in that district, and he's been, imposed upon about not doing things with windows and things, gutters, and he was angry.
Well, those are all things that historic district commissions review, so.
Okay, I think that we have used a lot of your time, and unless there are burning questions,
I don't know if it's a burning question,
but
but I have a question.
yes.
You talked a lot about education. So what were some effective ways that towns were able to educate
Mhm.
their citizens?
Yeah.
on historic districts?
Again, just, having information available, whether that's on the town's website or as handouts or something like that, that really clearly explains what it does and doesn't do, what it does and doesn't review. The process, that there is a process for, reviewing applications, that kind of things. Signage, having signs and, little yard signs or whatever about, establishing the district is always good as well. And then just, providing opportunities for folks to ask questions, whether that's, actually going and meeting with property owners individually, and again, speaking about their concerns about their property, or, having public meetings, public forums, that, offer a chance to kind of more ask questions in a larger sense, are all, sort of things that, would encourage, to get people out.
Have you been asked to come to things to educate the community?
So I do not do any of that kind of direct outreach work. I will come to your meetings and I'll answer your questions, but it's really up to the local community to handle the outreach and, handle the public facing.
If we wanted to do a workshop, and would you recommend somebody who could, sort of,
Yeah, I mean, there's
You do
consultants,
workshops.
that-
sorry?
As you do, Jen does numerous workshops, the same like Chris does.
Yes.
Which can't like when we attended.
But you're saying
But I
it's more
don't do them
specific,
for
more
the-
specific geared towards historic commissions versus going
Yes.
to like, if we went to the, Needham Heights, when they do the things at the library, and we got an hour, for education, is there somebody, who's more objective, they wouldn't see us and they could hear about that, and hear about it as a process that's statewide and nationwide and.
Yeah. I mean, you could reach out to some consultants. I don't know that there really is anyone that does that kind of work unless they're, unless you're doing a larger district and they're doing some documentation work and they're preparing the study report for you and things like that. For instance, we just paid recently, Boston received a grant from us to do an architectural conservation district in the Highland Park neighborhood of Roxbury. That was 400 properties total. So they hired PAL, which is consulting firm. PAL did inventory forms, they did the study report for them, and then they obviously hosted the public meetings for them. So larger situations like that, yeah, you can
Yes.
certainly reach out to a consultant, but what? Yeah, PAL Rhode Island, yeah. Yep.
Go ahead.
So our step one is to get the select board to appoint secretary.
Yeah, that's it. That's the thing. you need
Nothing
to
happens
do.
until that happens. right?
Yes, and then it's,
And then the education.
then you turn it over to the study committee and they, begin the process of considering whether you want to establish a local historic district and, looking at those exemptions in 40C, what the bylaw might be, what the makeup of a commission might be, what the boundaries of the district are, those kinds of things. And then, once they kind of decide on a lot of that stuff, they prepare what's called the preliminary study report. That gets submitted to me and your planning board. You have to wait 60 days before you hold a public hearing. And then after the public hearing, you can go to town meeting at any point. During that 60 days, you can certainly do other meetings. You just can't hold your official public hearing. But that can be a good time to do outreach to owners if you haven't already done it. If you have multiple people in the district. Do public meetings for town meeting members or town voters. Things like that.
Can you have more than one public meeting?
You can have as many as you want, but you do have to have one official public hearing after the 60 days expires.
But we can take care of the education piece.
Yeah.
After,
Building our cases.
Anywhere in the,
Towns.
anywhere in there, you can certainly, start the process of doing
Okay.
education and outreach work.
excellent. And it would be so lovely to have a newspaper again.
Hey, it is the one good thing about 40C is that there's no newspaper requirements, so you don't have to
Yes.
deal with any of that and,
But in terms of just reaching out to
reaching out to
people
people,
and
yes,
letting
yes.
them know that there is this thing and it's not coming to eat them. It's
The
very important.
Hometown Weekly has been a little bit more responsive in the absence of the other paper, so maybe this will help.
They certainly have. I sent them something and 2 days later it appeared.
So maybe this helps.
So maybe there is hope. Anyhow, thank you very much,
Yeah,
Janet.
thank you, Jen.
Thank you
It
guys.
really does help
Yep.
to have you here.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
if there's anything else beyond historic districts that come up, just let me know. I think, you guys had come, I think, to the establishing historic districts workshop
Yes,
in the past,
yes,
so
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Because I am running that again at the end of the month.
Well, 3 times for the normal mind, so
Yeah.
maybe I'll listen to it again.
Yeah, yep. So, but yeah, any questions as you go through the process, just let me know.
Where
Thank
are
you.
you holding that one?
Virtual.
Okay, yes.
I just wanted to note that we do have a member of the Unum Select Board here as an attending, Matt Borelli, who's a member who wanted to be passed on to be as part of this process, and note that.
Yes,
he's attending.
indeed. We see Matt there. We're very happy that he is here.
Did you have any questions for the agenda?
Do you have any questions, Matt?
He noted that he would remain an attendee for this
okay.
meeting.
Thank
Okay,
you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
And-
your thoughts. Thank you.
Happy Italy.
Thanks.
Have a wonderful trip.
Thank you very
Give them
much.
give them a big hug from me.
I
Very
will.
happy for
I
them.
will. I will be specifically noted.
All right, thank you guys.
Congratulations.
And
Thank you.
Dan's
Thank you,
grandfather was mayor of Sims, yeah.
There you go. Bye-bye.
Okay, and now we will move on to the approval of the May minutes. And are there any comments? We
I
had,
apologize for getting them to you so late. I thought I had done them. So.
Until I
Rose
got
said,
any-
can we get the minutes before the meeting? Because we need that list of questions. Oh, no, yeah, I did this. Oops. Yeah. That was April.
and you started out with fooey. Anyhow,
I just have a few editorial comments.
Sure.
but
Yes.
They
they're
got
very-
slammed out fast. So they're
Well,
probably
yeah,
good
that's
to-
what they're
yeah.
typos
that
and things
is
like
very-
that. So if I can just give this to you.
sure,
I don't know if we need to discuss it. It doesn't impact anything.
they are just typos.
Fixie doodle says.
Fixie
Yeah,
doodles?
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
It's just that page.
And I started to make them and I went, stop it. Stop it." But I'm glad you did. What? I said I started doing fixie doodles and then I went, stop it. Because I have been deemed a certain type in enneagrams. And there are negative things about it. Anyhow, other than typos, which can be fixed easily, is there any other comments about the minutes? Questions? Ms. Sarandon will be so happy to have them on the website because she asked about them. And I said, not until Monday. So could we have a motion to approve these?
I move to approve the minutes in May.
Okay, and may I have a second? Okay, thank you. All those in favor, and we have to do this properly. Okay, Jeff,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Laura,
All right,
Gloria, aye. And I'm saying aye also, so it is unanimous. Okay. Now, the next thing that we must deal with is the election of the commission officers for 22 and 23. And we have a slate with Laura as chair, Don as vice chair, and Gloria as secretary, for which she's had more experience tonight. Okay, so if the three people on the slate are not objecting, Jeff, would you make a motion to accept this slate?
Yes, I make a motion to accept the slate.
Okay, we have to have one of the,
I'll second.
okay,
Necessity, so.
yep, okay. All those in favor, and again, Jeff,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Laura,
aye.
thank you, Gloria,
Aye.
and I am saying aye also, so it is unanimous. Welcome, Laura.
You guys might regret this.
Ah, no. You thought you could avoid this by being on Zoom. Oh, no.
No, thanks for that accommodation, Rose. Just a really long day driving all over the place.
Not a problem. Now, what we do need to do is talk about what we are going to say to the select board about what we want. And I have a couple of extra copies of the goals that on the road up. Does anyone need them?
Rose, was that in an email? And if it's so, I apologize. And if so, what?
Yes, it
Okay,
was, it's the one that sent the agenda, the expanded agenda.
yeah, I have that.
Okay, and.
Oh, the select board document. Got it.
Yes, that's it.
Okay,
Okay,
yep.
all righty. Seems to me that it starts off making very good statements about why we need to have more, a different kind of historical preservation. And then we have the initiatives. And the first one lays out that it's Mo's house. And the second thing is appointing a district study committee. And then approving the, I mean, everything here is exactly what Jen has talked about, then approving the preliminary study report and the recommendations for bylaw. And I'm sure that Jen can give us sample bylaws. In fact, I know in one of her presentations, she talked about they're available. So once the select board has approved the preliminary study report, including the recommendations for the bylaw, then it goes to Mass Historical Council and Planning Board for review. And then at that point, we can actually start to do some serious education before we have the public hearing. And we can have meetings that are not the public hearing. And then the warrant article is prepared, the final report.
Is the timeline for this, and Miles, can I ask the question of
Yes.
Matt?
The timeline for,
The timeline for this goal
Mhm.
initiatives, is it that this year? So we're looking at like May town meeting to go to,
it's my understanding, through the chair, that it is the fiscal year. So July 1 through 30 June.
so submitting the bylaw, submitting the warrant article to town meeting would be this year's upcoming May town meeting,
May
May 23.
For the annual town meeting, if that is your goal, then yes, that would be the 2023 annual town meeting, which has not been scheduled, but would traditionally be held in May.
Yeah, yes.
And
right.
when would that have to, Miles, I'm sorry if I should know this, but when would that have to be created and submitted to the select board?
The schedule for submission of warrant articles has not been set for annual town meeting at this point in time. However, the best advice is the earlier the better.
Right.
I would absolutely, I don't want to give harder firm advice, but to have a well-vetted draft by the end of the calendar year would be extremely wise.
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy to circle back to you, Madam Chair.
So-
Or I'm happy to circle back to you. with-
Incoming, Madam Chair. I know, thank you.
Yeah.
I just needed to get a sense of it. Like if it was like September, I'd be like, oh boy, but okay, thank you.
The content of the warrant tends to be discussed after the new year, starting after the new year, like the February timeframe.
I do
We're
not,
not holding these dates, it's just. we're
yes,
just trying to
I
get
do not
success.
have a great answer. I've been through this process once, and off the top of my head, I don't want to give you bad information. So what I can do is I can circle back and find a better answer.
Thank you.
It seems to me also that what we need to do is get this document with the for the goals for the select board to Kate as soon as possible. Her deadline is I believe, January 29th,
June 20.
June 29th. Yeah.
So
sorry.
she wants us to comment on this?
Yeah, no, this is what
This is
Don.
Has to go to her.
Yeah.
I just- yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought this
And,
was.
no, what she asked for were any additions that we wanted to make to the goals for the select board for the coming fiscal year.
Oh, okay.
And it seems to me that we need to make, and Mo has sent a letter saying you really should make historical preservation and local historic districts one of your goals.
Yeah,
So they,
Rose, should we also add something about DEI in our goals? Should we be, I don't know, a little bit more well-rounded in our goals for the next year?
It's not our goal.
it's not our goals. These are goals for the select board. We are making suggestions to Kate. And then she will talk with the entire select board about what they will do in the next year.
Okay, but
They haven't yet drafted them, but the deadline is coming up and I really would like to.
so this is for them to do.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
But then it
Thank
puts it on their radar as something that is really important. And must be taken care of. Yes,
it's a hot potato, but we don't want to go anywhere near the current demo bylaws. We don't want to talk about that at all. We don't want to say review existing demo bylaws.
oh, I would, my personal opinion is we should stick to a single issue, which is the local historic districts and make that, have them make that one of their goals rather than, and
They initiated a review several years ago, of, you know, with the possible, with the consideration of extending it to 12 months, and it wasn't a very successful process.
I know,
You just muted
you
yourself.
just muted yourself.
I know, but a lot has changed. If you look at and I will deal with this maybe for next year, but if you look at what's happened in the real estate market and with inflation and with inventory from the last time that this was looked at, things have completely changed, completely, right?
Yeah,
So we have to move with the times, even if it's uncomfortable. We have to. And there's a working housing group committee that's looking at affordable and elderly and near transportation types of housing. We cannot just keep ignoring this thing because we're never going to get to any goals. So, but that's maybe on me for, you know, my thing for next year. And maybe I go through next year and say, oh no, that won't ever work. I'm never going to bring it up. But I think we need to just be thinking about it. And
There's
that's
also
just,
a discussion with the select board whether they wanted to pursue sort of two different preservation initiatives at the same time, or if they wanted to focus on just one.
and
you know what, I'm
would
happy
we
to wait
want
till
them-
next year, but I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna let it go. It's just
Yeah.
it's not gonna happen because it's too important.
Now, and we understand and we agree, but I think that just submitting one thing this year might be the best way to go. I was not aware that we had been asked for goals in the past. When I was on the library board, we would get the selectmen's new goals. And
We were not
weren't
asked for goals in the past. We were given, you know, the relevant portions of the goals document.
Okay, so the-
But the conversation did arise about strengthening the MOA to 12 months. And we did have a public meeting.
okay, but this is a new way of doing things, asking people
Yeah.
to input. So if this is okay, then I will just send it off to Kate from the board. But I think we need to take a vote. And if you don't agree, it's, it's your choice. So I need a motion and to forward the historic preservation goals, especially focusing on local historic districts. But I can't make the motion.
I'll make a motion to accept your Don's draft and submit these to the select board.
Thank you. I have a second from someone.
A second.
Okay. All right. So let us vote then. Jeff,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Laura,
Aye.
Gloria,
Aye.
and I am voting aye also. So it is unanimous. Okay, and I will send this off to Kate not tomorrow, or Wednesday, because I'll be in Providence, but maybe later tonight. Okay, this is June 29th. Okay, do we have any updates on the houses on the inventory and anything happening?
No, I haven't heard anything from the that I spoke to last month. No, it was Mill's house.
Okay,
So, that was contingent on her selling the house. I don't know if she's decided to go forward with the sale or if she sold it to somebody else or,
no,
he was just seeking information, so there wasn't anything solid.
under,
Actually, excuse me, so I did have a question. And now that Chip has retired, is there a new assessor yet? Is there somebody that we can get that property information from?
Well, we found that the property information was kind of difficult to follow because there were a lot of LLCs, there were estates. It didn't really give us the names that we had hoped it would.
So what, I'm sorry, Don, I mean, I can find that information out if we have the LLCs as a way to find out who's behind the LLCs.
Right.
It's, do you want
It's
me
a matter
to
of
do,
public record. You could
Yeah.
access
you just go to Secretary of State Corporation Search and you type in the name of the LLC and it will give you the annual report and any other like filing reports, and it'll list who the members are.
Right. Chip's reports there were a lot of holes in them because there weren't names. And I guess our hope anyway was that we would be able to get names, so we would be able to send a letter to whoever is listed as the owner. But
Do you want to, if you want to send me the names of the LLCs, I'm happy to see if I can find anything on it.
well.
I haven't had a report from Chip for a while since he's.
What's the property address?
No, what we were trying to do is, the assessor was kind enough to let us know when houses, or I guess it would give us a list of houses.
Oh, right.
On a quarterly basis.
Yeah, and sort of
Yeah.
ownership, we would scan through it for houses that were on the inventory, so we could let the new
Yeah.
property owners that they were on the inventory.
Yeah, and is that
And then
by,
Letter.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Don.
Yes,
Got it.
yes,
And I suspect the LLCs don't care, so, right, because the whole point of buying the house is to tear it down, and they'll find out soon enough.
Was this sales, recent sales that he was supposed to be updating us on? I'm trying to, because I think I may have been part of suggesting that we ask him to help us with that. Was this?
yeah,
Yeah, we had been doing it for a while
we
now.
did it for a while.
Yeah,
And now he can't, there's no one there to do it,
right.
right?
Problem is not so much that there's no one there to do it, but the information that Chip provided didn't give us what our intent was, to get names of people who are buying historic homes. Because sometimes they were either LLCs, estates. It didn't give us the clear information.
Right, but I can
Who-
find out who that is. So I don't know if we, like, do you have a list from him? Do we have a list or no? We just have
No.
nothing.
Yeah, no, well, I've been distributing those at our meetings
Yeah,
up until
So-
recently. So,
and one of them was an historic house, and it was on the list because the woman had refinanced again.
Right.
Well, she didn't need a letter saying you live in an historic house because she knew that. She's lived there for 30, 40 years. So it's.
It wasn't yielding the information.
I'm
um,
sorry, Don, I haven't, I'm sorry if I missed it, but I don't remember receiving that recently. I mean,
Oh, no.
We haven't had it recently, but you received all the earlier ones.
There were never very many.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, we get a notice that a house had changed hands. Wasn't a frequent occurrence.
so this might be a project for an intern. I don't know if we can use an intern over the summer, but are we allowed to ask to have one or?
who supervises the intern?
Well, one of us would. I mean, I don't know. I'd be happy to, but if someone would be willing to do that as some sort of college student or high school student or just
I'm not
throwing it
sure
out
it's
there.
I'm not sure it's going to yield the information we hope it will yield.
Yes.
I mean, you can look into it if you wish, but.
No, if you don't think it's worthwhile, I won't waste my time.
We spun our wheels for quite a while.
It's probably
for this.
almost more worthwhile looking at, they still publish the list of closings in the paper?
Yes.
You wouldn't go by the paper. You'd go to the Norfolk Registry of Deeds and look for the mortgage or the deed transfers for Needham, Mass. So you don't wait for the newspaper. It's
Because it's so dated, yes. But then taking our over 100 properties and putting them into the Norfolk Registry of Deeds, that's really time consuming.
Yeah, and we approached.
No, you
that.
wouldn't put anything in there. That's where you would find out what sold.
But
Right.
you would have to have the list.
So you have to
of-
compare it to the list.
Yes. It just did not work.
That's fine.
We sent out a couple of letters and that's all. There is one thing though that I do want to ask you, and the new board, new officers will take over in September, but it's still the summer. And we may have to be doing things. And one of the things that I'm doing tomorrow is talking with Marcus right before you. I'm giving him an overview of what we do. And I was also thinking of doing a very brief, I get 15 minutes, SWOT analysis, our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And, I think we know what they are.
So how does that get transferred over to me, Rose?
Well, I think that I should write up what I'm planning to say to Marcus tomorrow. But then another question is, since we now have 2 openings, Marcus is going to be working to fill these openings. The question is, are you comfortable having me work with Marcus, or do you want to do it?
I'm happy to do it. I was going to ask the question. I mean, what can we do? We can't, besides just posting something on the town website, can we do a Facebook post? Can we, can we have our own Facebook page? What can we do where can we use the town of Needham? There's a bunch of Needham town pages where we could ask for people who are volunteers. I mean, I don't know, Miles, how do other committees do this?
Do you have candidates you're interviewing tomorrow?
No.
We have no,
There have not been any candidates.
There are no applicants currently for the vacancies on this.
so Miles, can we use Facebook? Can we use I mean, is there a way to reach out instead of just posting it on the town website, which I don't, and I'm not sure everybody looks there?
So the first question that I know I don't know the answer to is, can the town commission or other body besides the town itself have a Facebook or social media page that's sponsored by the town? I don't know that. I can ask that question.
Would you please, because
I can.
I think that we could get into a lot of trouble, and the library has. And has a Facebook page, and the foundation has a Facebook page, so,
I can look up that answer.
okay.
I guess the question is, Mark, Miles, and maybe it's for Cynthia, how do we advertise these volunteer roles? I mean, I think we can do more than just posting it on the website, right?
So they're not just posted at this point in time on the site. They are included in the weekly newsletter along with other vacancies. The Historical Commission is not alone in having current vacancies without applicants.
Mhm.
So.
But what if you don't subscribe to the newsletter? You don't get that
You asked,
information.
Yeah, so Cindy and I do work closely together when it comes to committees and advertising. Frankly, when it comes down to it, it's she'll ask, hey, what committees do you have up now? And what can we include in, whether it's the newsletter, something like a social media post when we're advertising. Usually it's usually not just one committee that is in the situation that Historical is in right now.
Right.
But how do we target that? And right now, I can at least say my intent is to start with a re-advertising of continuing vacancies once we get through the reappointment process, which is happening, as you know, right now.
Does the
so-
town have a Facebook page, though, that it can post these things on?
We do, and they are. They are posted.
They are.
Okay.
Okay.
Could I,
What was one of the candidates that's expressed interest to a committee that doesn't have an opening? Have they been asked if they would serve on another committee?
That's not usually a question we do ask. We do encourage folks when they send in their application to, especially if there aren't vacancies, we let them know there aren't current vacancies, but here's a list of all the committees. If you really want to serve, recommend you look at them, reach out to committee chairs and all that. The number one way we've recruited folks is through committee members themselves. So when we have these that we know are that leadership or committee members know that there's a vacancy coming up on, the thing that we also ask is folks who are interested in the same things when they serve on these bodies usually have peers or friends or neighbors who are also interested in similar things and bringing them into serving
Could
the
I
public.
Could I put something on my Facebook page, not as a Historical Commission member, but say, hey, can I say I am the incoming chair of this committee? We need volunteers. Can I do that without causing a problem, or?
You are more than welcome to do so.
so I
In
can
fact,
post it on our newsletter too, saying you'll contact the town hall.
So we all can do that, right? If we have a Facebook page?
absolutely,
As long as we're not
absolutely.
representing ourselves as the town.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or even you can identify yourself as, someone who serves. We've had a committee chair do that just in the past few months who knew they had some vacancies. He went on the Needham Facebook page and said, hey, if you're interested, message me and here's where you can apply. So you're more than welcome as residents to do that. They had quite a few applicants.
Can we do it on our own Facebook page, though?
That's exactly what he did.
Okay, great,
More than welcome to say, I serve on this committee. We have vacancies. Would
perfect.
love for you to put your hat in the ring.
Okay, that'll take me 2 seconds.
Beautiful. Excellent.
Thank you, Miles.
Okay.
It's also worth asking Marcus for some contacts in other town groups that we might want to contact. Especially for more diversity on the board.
That was one of the things I was going to talk with them about. And
These people justice need it, and so there may be members that don't see our stuff as a matter of routine, but might be interested in participating. We may not be participating.
Well, Laura,
that's definitely.
Laura speaks to this changing climate of real estate, given this housing group. And I wonder if there's anybody, I know some people on that housing group that I would not want them to be on this commission. So I don't know if you have any insight into if anyone's in a member there that might be sympathetic to our mission.
Yeah,
That
I mean,
that would be something, because that would be a good group. That would be a good group to have a plant of preservation
But I think
in there because.
We have a lot of interest, so we think.
There-
Yeah, we do, with,
Somewhat.
around development and tear downs, we have a lot of interest.
Rose, do you think, with regard to your communication with Marcus, do you think, I can't remember how you said it was going to be done. Do you think I should be part of that with you?
It's 15 minutes tomorrow. And
Okay,
At 3:30,
at 3:30, yes,
it's via Zoom
and
and
it's Zoom.
I'm happy to forward the link if you're comfortable, if you're all.
Sure, if you would like, if you've got time at 3:30 tomorrow, Marcus should know who you are.
let me just check. I'm sure, well, I shouldn't say that. Let me just, give me 1 sec. I'll find out, let's see. Tuesday, 3:30. Yeah, I do. I do,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
mind?
Miles, may I email you my work email address? Because that would be probably the best thing for me, because I'll be at my office, if that's okay.
Absolutely. I do have it, and you should be receiving this momentarily.
Okay,
Great, thank you so much.
it's fine. One of the things in new business is I was going to thank Dylan and wish him well. But he's not here, so
Thanks, Dylan.
just go
He sent
to the air.
he
Thank
sent an email at 7:08 asking if there was a Zoom meeting tonight.
At 7:08.
I think it was.
Rose, do you want,
Yes.
to, at some point, we have to compile, is this going to be in September? Our results from our discussions with Match Town Historical Commission people on local historic districts?
Yes, I absolutely. I think that these calls ought to be made as soon as possible before people go off on vacations for the summer, so that we have this all put together as soon as possible.
And could everybody send, I guess you want them to be sent to me, right, Rose?
Yes,
Because you want me to make like a compilation of the,
absolutely.
okay. I have a meeting with Deb in person, either tomorrow or Thursday. I'm waiting to hear back.
Excellent, good. We should find out a lot of good stuff. And you are in touch with Danvers
Right.
also.
Did you send, want me to send this, what I received to Laura?
Yes, but I would, wow. Who's that?
Dawn,
Who's in Emerson? What-
Oh, that's me.
Oh,
I figured if I used that email address, I might give an answer. And in this case, I did.
that's very clever. That is very clever.
So this fella, his name is Aaron Henry, but for whatever reason, I keep calling him Henry Aaron. He,
you could call him O. Henry too.
And I hate people who have names that can be transposed because.
Yeah.
He provided some information, but he also forwarded my email to the town archivist, who was involved in the creation of the local historic commission.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're on our way and Jeff has got stuff and Gloria has stuff and I've got a couple, so we will move on. Do you want to mention the book idea?
Oh, well, Rose and I were just talking about maybe if there was something else we could do in Rick's memory.
Mhm.
And one idea that we had tossed around was maybe a book on preservation donated to the library. but it's something we can look into.
Right, and I have no idea what titles are out there. I will talk with the librarian. Okay, I will do that. And I know
Jen might
that,
also have,
ooh,
Jen might also have a suggestion.
Jen might have a
You know,
suggestion.
what's a useful book for town to have?
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. That's actually
Miles,
much better than asking the librarian at the Needham Library. Miles, you're being called?
Yes,
I'm sorry. The meeting invite you sent was for 2 o'clock from 2 to 4 tomorrow. So
yep. Yep,
it-
in the body of the invite, there's a list of the times that it's the same Zoom link for multiple different committees. And so folks,
oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. My apologies. Okay, thank you.
If we dial in, say, at 3:25,
I'll leave you in the waiting room
good.
and we'll bring you
Okay.
in when your time's up.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to know. I've always wanted to be left in the waiting room.
And then ushered in.
Well, I'd love to give it, no, I don't have time to give it some of the other meetings. As much as I would like to know about solid waste. Okay, we do have, we have actually gone through everything. And what we need to do is adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Okay, Gloria and Don. So we'll do it again. Jeff,
I
Don,
aye.
Laura,
Aye.
and Gloria.
Aye.
And I vote aye also. We're done here.
Thank you.
It's been
Congrats.
a great year.
You did a great job, Rose. Yay. I don't, there's a big shoes to fill, Rose.
You'll be
Are you
fine.
saying I've got
You'll
big
be
feet?
good. Yeah.
No.